Like everybody, I'm Adam with Global Lazy Media, Clicks in the Pit. I'm sitting here with Ronan
Hi,
from
Ronan
VNV
from
Nation.
VNV Nation. Hello.
Sitting out here at the Buren. And you guys are currently on your tour right now?
Oh yeah, it's a fun one. We kind of stepped in right after like COVID stopped everyone from touring, especially from abroad. Coming back, it looks like everyone had waited from last year to pre-book everything for this year to all go out at the same time as us. So when we started booking the tour 6 months ago, 7 months ago, more, no buses, light companies saying we don't have anything, all crew that I would usually use, they're all booked out. So it was a really stressful one setting this up, but what we had to do is postpone some shows from the beginning that were planned to next year, and everything since then has been running like a dream. It's very strange being back.
It seems like since COVID, it's kind of there. That's kind of been the norm. I think that a lot of the fans and people just don't realize that when you have that amount of bands all of a sudden touring at once, that there's going to be a shortage of bus and drivers and
the other
merch thing and everything.
Indeed. And the other thing we noticed on the West Coast, a lot of people wearing masks to shows because there's obviously people thinking there's a surge and we got to be careful. And a lot of people at the last minute saying trying to sell the tickets just don't feel right. I'm not saying that's across the board. We've got a lot like packed shows, but still.
You guys just had a sold out last night in California.
LA was insane. Seattle was off on another level. What I'm noticing is we have like VNV's music that I write. It's poetic, but it has reached a point where it's become a guide or like a kind of a, how do I put it, a compliment to people's lives. Like it's been there with them all through their lives. And it has inspired and comforted them in great moments. There's a huge personal depth of meaning for them with the music. So I'm noticing a lot of catharsis at shows. People just feeling they're letting out everything that's been built up for years, these last few years. I saw that in the UK as well. And I wasn't quite prepared for it on the level. I've had people coming up and we're just hugging. That's all we're doing.
I think plenty of people are just ready to get back to the the norm, regardless of what the media and everybody is saying.
We're doing this in Europe. Everyone's just like, hey, look, it's a cold now. Yes, it affects old people. We understand that. Immunocompromised. They need protection, but everyone else should be able to go about their day. Otherwise, everything just falls apart. We're not all staying home anymore. Nobody wants to. No. I think it'd be impossible for them to get.
I wasn't able to stay home from the beginning, anyways, with the type of jobs and everything I had to begin with. So I mean, and honestly, I'd knock on wood, I've still yet to get it with the amount of shows and.
Well, I had it once. I caught it late. I was on. I don't know, myself and my partner. We made a deal. We're going to shut ourselves off. I'm going to look. She will work at home and do her stuff and whatever else, and she was studying as well part time. And I will take care of everything else. I was the one masking up and going off and following all the regulations. And my office is about 10 minutes away, so I was at least able to go backwards and forwards. We could have our space, and we made it work. But it just by becoming a small, neat team and helping others close to us, around us where we could. But the whole isolation thing, I think I started to do everyone's head in. Anyway, let's not dwell on the horrible past.
Right. So just a little insight on you. Born in Dublin, Ireland.
Indeed. Born and raised.
Born and raised. Still got that little accent going there.
Thank you very much. I actually neutralized it when I left the country because it was the days when you went to Britain, you tried to play down or smooth out your accents. It'd be like coming from deepest Kentucky and then going to New York to try to get a job, and people judge you based upon what they hear.
Oh, of course.
And the Brits had that attitude towards us at the time, so it got you into a lot of trouble in the streets, and it was a transition phase where old Britain and its attitudes towards places that were it had once ruled. I have no bitterness or no sort of attitude about it, but yeah, I moved to London. My dad had spent a lot of time there. Half my family is English on my dad's side, and it was just like a natural progression for me to leave Ireland and go to England, and then I kind of play down my accent, and I find myself, other than talking to my family or talking to my closest friends, where my natural accent comes out, it's coming out more and more, and it got really strong on this tour to the point that some people couldn't even understand what I was saying. So,
Yeah, it's funny when somebody has an accent like that. When you said, like you said, you start to develop it more and more. And then some were just like, what the hell's that guy saying?
Well, we got a lot of crazy accents on this tour. We got people who spent half their lives in South Carolina and people who are from very, very rural parts, and everyone's kind of trying to communicate with each other. People from Idaho, where they speak all nice and pleasant. So just to give you a kind of background on me, I tinkered with synths. I was in loads of bands. I was crazy about synthesizers in the 70s for their more cinematic capabilities. And I just, through the 80s, that was the time when you could hear lots of really crazy, wonderful underground artists mixing different types of instruments but creating something like a big sound. And that became my inspiration. So I tinkered in a lot of bands. 89 I left, 88 actually I left. And right at the beginning of 88 I moved to London and I was working in the computer industry, that was my thing. Which enabled me to buy equipment and I started to develop things. Originally I had this project, it was a self-contained thing. I'd read The Handmaid's Tale and a number of other dystopian books about like a totalitarian society, and I loved the movie 1984.
Right.
And I loved the book, I read that in school. And politics, because of the Cold War, played a very big part in it's all right, you work away.
Right.
That's your little alarm.
Yeah.
Saying, take the clothes out of the dryer. So I wanted to make something in its own nutshell, and that the stuff that I made for it is all gone. That doesn't bear any relevance anymore. But that was like me tinkering around, and then it just developed into something. Late 1990, I moved to Toronto because the person I was dating, and it changed into something else. There was a kind of a burgeoning little sort of quasi. There was on one side you had proto electro or industrial bands, and the other side you had people making kind of rave music, and I kind of just loved all forms of electronic, and I met people making ambient, and we would all just jam together, share whatever gear, and it all kind of solidified, and it was all bedroom stuff that you were just making and tinkering with no confidence. And then I hooked up with some friends in Holland who helped me get onto a label in Germany, and when I moved back to London and in '94 they helped me get the bedroom demos released, and I was just thrilled the fact that there was a CD with my name on it. That was it. And
was that
was
just under Nation, or is that?
No, it's everything. VNV Nation has been the name since about I'd say probably around 1990.
Right. So I know I know I read briefly it was under Nation.
Yeah, the thing is actually a lot of those Wikipedia entries are very erroneous. Like they've amalgamated a bunch of information people thought they knew over years.
Right. Yeah, I know anybody can change it.
Back before the internet, but even back before the internet being the mainstay of where you got your information from. So there's a lot of hearsay and a lot of things that people have, like nobody even knew what year I was born. They didn't know how old I was. They didn't know anything. I was very young.
Sometimes that's good.
Well, I was a very young looking person. Even at 30, I would be mistaken for 20. I had that side. There was some of my family have those genes. So I met a bunch of old school friends recently, and I looked at them and I thought, good God, do any of you like skin cream? You know, they all look like cracks on the moon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been blessed with that, and always a youthful energy and always being creative and stuff. But I guess it was an exploration of just, there was no plan. It was just find my way, and I just made music that was something that was inside me. What I call our first album is the 1998 album. Well, it was when it was released, Praise the Fallen. I regard that as the first album because that was the blank slate, and I created something that was somewhere between bits of industrial, bits of rave, bits of or different forms of electronic, and something very cinematic and orchestral, and it's kind of become a theme. And then the next album, Empires '99, that became a little bit more focused and a little more purist, and I love songs. I love that songs tell a story.
Well, I mean, I can definitely tell from the wide variety of catalog that you have now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's one area you love to implement different types of sounds and different.
I see it as palettes. I mean, it depends. Sometimes you make something that sounds specifically like a certain style of music, which is out there, but I'm always adding in elements of different things. And I've gone through phases, whatever took my fancy at the time. And there's always been a new album, like roughly every 2 years, and sometimes a little bit longer. And I've drifted into working now. My dream from, I never anticipated it would be a part of VNV, but working with an orchestra. And I've loved classical music since I was about 5 years old. I had a friend of the family who sat me down when he watched me listening to a piece of music. And I was studying music, even though it's audio, I'm hearing it as if it's physical objects. It's almost like a synesthesia thing. And I just loved the way all the elements would come in and out and how they would create emotions. It was an astonishing medium for me. So he said, "Do you know what the composer is trying to say?" And I had a guess. And, I mean, I was really young, but I was very verbal, and still am. And because of that, I learned how classical music was written, how it tried to tell its story, and what have you. That it was like a book. So working with an orchestra in these, like, we're jumping all over the place, by the way, because there have been lots of albums, I can imagine. And every couple of albums, there's this huge surge of whole new fans who just hear an album, wow.
Which is great.
Automatic 2011 or Judgment 2007, Matter and Form even 2005, they all got a whole new region of people who had never heard the sound before and got something out of it. There's a theme that runs through all the albums, although there's an outward aesthetic, and there are bunches of albums which kind of connect together. They're a phase, kind of like, you know, the way old painters would say, "I'm in my blue phase," and yeah, it went through the 2010s. I started to build more and more my own studio. I've been kind of amassing that over time, but never spending the time to get something where I can make a finished product in it. And meanwhile, back in the pandemic, I used that time to build myself an incredible studio in Hamburg. And
plenty of time.
It was painful. I had all the plans. I love being self-sufficient, not because I'm a control freak in the sense that I can design this myself and I know how all the tools work, or learn them. And I designed the whole layout of everything. A friend was renting a huge space and said, "Do you want half of it because I can't use it?" I was like, "Yeah, I'll have at it." Have a little studio complex, and I was very, very blessed and lucky because I used to be in another building that they were about to rip down, and we got little or no notice, so everything had to go out. Anyway, I got the time, like 2019, we started building it, put up all the walls, everything was great, studs, all done. And then the pandemic comes along and it's like everything shuts down, all the companies stopped working, nobody could be scheduled.
Can't go get supplies, you can't do nothing.
Well, you couldn't get people, like one guy's got to come in and do this, then they leave, then another company comes in and does this, and then the first company comes back. Trying to schedule people when everyone's on furlough or they just can't book anything was impossible. It was a long, painful process. What I ended up doing was, on my phone I have a synthesizer, and with my rather fat fingers, which you can't see from this distance, but they're here, my farmer's hands, which I inherited from one half of my family, I would play melodies that were just cropping up in my head. That's how I write my music. The songs just appear in my head. Usually when I'm not doing anything studio related, or I'd whistle them in, or I'd sing them in, or I'd describe notes and I would transcribe it later and make up all the demos. I still have about 97 songs that just from the pandemic. And that's on top of all the things I've never worked on and developed. And I keep going back, and when I'm making an album, I go back and listen to everything. It kind of absorbs, it filters together. And for albums like Noir, for example, When is the Future was written in 2007. It's just a sketch. And I had heard it the night before. One day I was sitting there and I just hit a sound and I thought, oh, like this. And for some reason, naturally, it played out the whole kind of structure of this piece that I'd been listening to that I wrote back in, I think, 2007, something like that. And there are directories of all these little ideas. And I tried to pull all of them into an album and give it as much depth as possible by pulling all of these little sketches I've done and try to amend them to a track. So that's how it's all been written in the last couple of years. But once that studio was finished, I mean, Electric Sun is for me just the best experience in that I have the studio, I can do whatever I want, I can be locked in there for a year.
I think that's what's nice about having your own personal. It's now you can wake up and you get an idea in the middle of the night, you can walk right in there.
It's not at home. It's not at home, but I have a little setup that I can bring portably, so I can go into my second bedroom, put on a pair of headphones,
Gotcha.
and it's just like working with speakers. It's a really interesting tool that allows your headphones to operate. You can hear everything clearly, and I can mix, and I did that actually on the album. I mixed 2 tracks completely with headphones just to prove to myself it was possible. But I got this depth by using, really spending the time listening, learning, using all the downtime to learn as much about production that I hadn't known, like tips and tricks, listening to the masters, playing the empty cup philosophy of like, I know nothing, teach me. And then adding that to what I knew and then thinking, okay, I think I've got this. And I just had so much fun just feeling my way rather than an engineer who's trained will go, oh, it's this sound, we do this with it. I was feeling my way and saying, what do I like? And that allowed me to make the music have all how I hear it in my head to sound more like what I was imagining. One day they're going to make a really nice brain interface where I'll be able to write all the music and it'll just come out fully known.
I'm sure they already have it, but
the thing with the orchestra, I think it was 2014. I was asked. They do this festival in Germany where they get an orchestra in a beautiful music hall in Leipzig, beautiful, like proper classical music hall for all kinds of cultural events, what have you. And they bring in an orchestra and they have bands out of genres and they play orchestral versions of their music. And in Germany they call everything Gothic. That's like somehow associated with the word, like wearing, or the idea of wearing black clothing. They just have very generic terms. They call it the dark scene. And that could be everything. It's ridiculous how broad that is. However, alongside bands that don't have anything to do with what I do or me with them, and yet it all gelled. Because of my love of classical music, they got about halfway through the question asking me if I wanted to be part of it. And I just said yes. No, but I have to explain to you, yes, I'm doing this.
Right.
And
like you didn't even need to hear the rest.
No, it's like how much.
It's like getting that job interview you've been waiting for.
Exactly.
You're like,
and then they like, oh yeah, but you have to pay 10,000 to do it.
Yes.
We haven't reached that part.
Oh.
I didn't. By the way, I didn't. I just said I don't care. This is like could be a penniless venture, break even, whatever.
That's like
cover my costs.
True.
Absolutely.
Playing with somebody like the Hollywood Bowl or something,
God.
that'd be,
my God. So then the best thing happened was that they brought in an audio company to record it for all the bands. And they really didn't have a clue what they were doing. And don't bullshit a bullshitter. Don't tell someone, we stood on a digital cable and we got loads of distortion and crackling. Right. It's like, that's not how digital works. So that excuse, I kind of laughed at it. I said, so you didn't record it? All right, no problem. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back to the arranger and say, hey, he's a lovely person. We've become very, very close friends. Lovely, lovely person. And we can communicate through pieces of classical music. So I can say, all right, this is a different presentation. But in Beloved, for example, as a song from 2002, this piece here, I'm expressing this, it needs to have this kind of, this sort of presentation or this orchestration. And I would use pieces of music as reference to say that's the tone we're looking for. And when there was somebody who said to me, but isn't that copying? And I went, no, it isn't actually. It's just to say, can you say it like this person says this sentence? Right. There's nothing, you're not copying that. Plus everything's already been invented. But when you actually hear how composers worked in the 1800s and how they were listening to a recital and going, I'm stealing that. And they did, and everybody copied from each other, but it was a cross-pollination, and it was beautiful. So that resulted in an album called Resonance in 2015.
Honestly, I have to say that's probably my most favorite album out of your. I'm not saying that the rest of them are great.
No.
But I can go back to that album numerous times, especially on just with the weather changing now. I'll just get in the car ride. I'll just turn that album on, and I'll just go.
I learned a lot making it. I had the benefit of working with one of the best orchestras for this style of music, which is the Babelsberg Film Orchestra. And they get used for a lot of soundtracks for films. Babelsberg Studios is world famous if you're in the film world. It's where they made Metropolis. The hall where the orchestra plays adjoins the hall where Metropolis was filmed. And that hall was built purely to film Metropolis. They needed a gigantic soundstage. They're in this beautiful building. They're a wonderful orchestra. You can really connect with them. A lot of bands work with them, but it's more like, you fill in the background. Right. And I had such a love. I felt so like an imposter. I'm not a trained formal musician, but I have all this passion. I want to know how you play. I talk to every one of them. Many of them still really good friends. And I had the most phenomenal experience working with them, recording it. But I learned a lot about how I should present myself, how I should sing. And even though I sound a bit husky right now because I had a horrible allergic reaction on this tour, which has left me husky some days. During the concert it all works out fine. But I had to go and relearn aspects of singing which I'm going to be employing on the
I
next.
think it's different. I think it's no different than, somebody just go out and sing and all of a sudden they become with a vocal instructor and they learn how to properly sing.
I was a soprano, so I'm learning all these things again, like the breathing techniques and
Right.
also how to project from certain
Yeah.
certain parts of your torso. And I'd forgotten all those because you get into bad habits when you do alternative music. And
Get lazy.
yeah. Or you're just running out on stage and doing what you
Right.
think sounds right, but you're doing it wrong and you're hurting yourself, or you're not breathing correctly. You could do it better, and it's all about trying to do it better. So
And I think that's how a lot of vocalists now lately, I seem to notice a lot more is people having vocal problems and canceling shows, and they ruptured something or they did because they're either
it
not.
happens once, it will happen a lot. I mean, with me
Oh, yeah.
this last year, it might seem to people that this is a recurring theme, but I have an allergy, a long-standing allergy, which I've known about for 30 years, to stage smoke, so I can't use a fog machine. And it will coat my vocal cords with this cake, and it causes a form of asthma. So my vocal cords shut
Is that
down.
why I'm always coughing when I'm out there?
Probably. A lot of people don't know how bad it is. And people
Oh,
who
yeah.
vape don't even know why they're getting lung problems,
Yeah, I've
because
said that for a long
the
time.
polypropylene glycol in a lot of vape fluid is very harmful to lungs and your throat. And people, a lot of light companies were like, that's bullshit. And I said, no, actually, here's the case where the San Francisco Opera singers actually took a case against the owners because they said this is harming our vocals, and they were experiencing a lot of problems, having to fight against it, having to gargle more to get rid of this
Right.
cake. So, but yeah, I learned a lot. And but I got laryngitis this tour because everybody got a flu on the tour in Europe, and I'm the one singing, so people who don't have to talk or would have to communicate with people all sounded like they'd just been gargling with gravel. Like the merch person was like, hello.
Right.
She was a wonderful person, but she would talk like Lee Marvin for about a week. And I, of course, being the vocalist, I was going to be straining the part that was the most affected. Everyone else had a cold, I had it. Someone always brings a tour flu on. And I got really ill, sweating off, and my voice just, the end of a show, I was just, went to make a note, no feeling, nothing felt wrong, nothing worked. There was no sound coming out, I couldn't even whisper a sound. I haven't had laryngitis since I was, I think, 10, so I had to stop. And that will affect your vocal, that will, the next year you have to train and train. So I do a lot of training, a lot of prep. There's a lot of things I've learned about doing, what I have to do to warm my voice for a show. Because if it's not warm, it's like training. You need to flex, you need to stretch.
What?
And so those kinds of things. And then on this tour, allergic reaction, way too much smoke on stage. My vocals just went, forget it. But I had an actual allergic reaction. And I had to go to an emergency doctor, and he was like, whoa, you are really badly affected, like all over. Swelling up. Feeling ill effects because your whole body just feels unhealthy, and I had to rest for 3 days. And then when we got back on the road, we only had to postpone 2 shows for that, but when I got back on the road, it was like plain sailing, and the shows have been incredible. So that's a kind of a random jumping all over the place. I'm working on a new Resonance album. I have to
I saw it kind of I noticed that I saw something new that was either supposed to be released this month, but then I saw something for
April next year.
Okay, because I was getting different conflicts of dates for
Weird.
that. So
Again.
yeah, I saw
The internet, the
it was either
facts.
it was I saw that it was supposed to be released this month at the end, but then I saw something for July of this year. I'm like, okay,
I don't have any plans for anything this year. There was an album, like Electric Sun was released in April.
Right. I know because when I searched for that, I think you have maybe the pre-order for the
Sure.
thing.
That may have done it right.
But I think the dates I was looking at is maybe
I didn't have the year. Next year, May, I am doing 8 concerts in Germany, and we're working on the arrangements for 10, possibly 12 songs, 12 pieces, which we're going to present, and they're really lovely, like some adventurous stuff in there, and some pieces on it are planned that are not available otherwise, so they're written purely to be orchestral pieces. We've also done something that we, like for example on the first Residence you hear a song like Sentinel, and it's presented in a very melancholic, negative, kind of sad way, compared to the song which is quite jubilant and quite sort of focused and forceful and very in strict tempo. In that it was the sarcastic side of what that song was about, and like a cynical view of like it's a kind of a thought that I have repeatedly, that one day there will be empty cities and nobody will be around because we're all gone.
Right.
And there'll all be these posters advertising how wonderful we were and all these pictures lying around of how great our lives were. And it's like if you were sitting there with a little oil drum with fire in it.
It might be a lead into a good music video, leading through a vision of that, and with some dust kicking up and just walking down an empty street. And
I write video treatments.
Well, make it happen. You can make it happen.
It costs
of course.
It costs a fortune, and everyone thinks, yeah, but you're a band, look, you're playing all these shows, you must be like really rich. It's like, it doesn't work like that anymore. It's not the 80s.
It doesn't work like that.
It's not the 90s. Like you're kind of living on your merch and you're living on your life income and what have you, but records, nobody buys it. At least in North America. Europe, the VNV Nation is really successful. And
honestly,
Germany,
I still buy albums just for one.
Germans buy albums. Germans buy CDs. They buy vinyl.
I've started collecting vinyl since, especially if you do the comics of the colored ones or the.
If you make good packaging, I've tried to do that. We did a gold version of the Resonance album, which I would say to people, don't play it because the gold particles in the vinyl actually reduce the audio quality. But still,
I usually never play them. It's just go on display.
See, I never had a gold disc, so it's my way of compensating for it. I made my own.
There you go.
So, there are so many plans, out of all of this and what follows up. We're going to conclude this part of the tour. We have a big tour plan for North America next year. But when I go back, I have 3 weeks before we play a whole slew of sold-out shows in Germany. It's crazy that our connection with fans in Europe is intense, and it's loyal and wonderful, and I really go out of my way to show them that and try to give them something that makes them realize that, okay, I'm making this for myself, but I want to acknowledge that you are very much a part of what I am and what has become VNV Nation. So nobody should ever take requests from the general public, because there's always someone who's going to be loud and shout out, oh, you know what, I wish every album sounded like this album.
Right.
That doesn't work. You understand that, but people in the gallery yelling out, they don't quite understand what works, why it doesn't. It's nice to have, but so I try to play a compromise game, and it's worked, and it's always, the music has evolved and evolved with the people. And when Electric Sun came out, I said, please listen from beginning to end, because the opening track is like the theme music to a film. It added all these extra dimensions, and I felt like, again, with another album, I'd taken another set of gloves off, and I just keep wanting to go. I had already written another album, and the title and concept of the album could have been tied to world events. I didn't want that. I didn't want to be limited by that. I don't want to be interpreted in terms of things that are happening there, because that's not what I'm about.
Right.
I'm very much about zoom out of the earth, look at everything in perspective, think about the future, think about the past, whatever, or an individual's experience. But I am not going to do that whole kind of thing of like, yeah, this is about whatever's happening in the media now, because in 3 months or 6 months' time, you're listening to this song going, and is it relevant? I just want to be I do not want to be tied to the everyday stupidity that humans are capable of, as if this mattered. I want to write something that is on a broader scale. So I had this album, I had to can it for the time being, but I also had a second concept album, which was the whole idea for Electric Sun. So